I don't know when I like that so much.
Yeah, there's.
I'm not very entertaining.
That must be.
There we go, we got power. Like, got the rest of your little bit or something.
I don't know. Because 1 year ago, I was like, not sure. There's something. So, they're girls.
I responded.
They're freshmen. They actually.
Do I use their, where I was before?
I mean, that's our. I'm trying Here they are.
Okay. Welcome back to session 3 of the data conference. I don't know if everyone's, hopefully the online people are coming back as well. Looks like there's only others. Said only 4, there's 34. Okay. Next slide. And probably one more slide. Okay, agenda, incident data. We're excited for this one. That's not you? Oh, Willie, okay.
She's on.
Okay. Special education updates, dropout analysis, chronic absenteeism, membership and enrollment facts, teaching and learning, licensure announcements, assessment announcements, Sunbucks update. And we're waiting with UFA with what's going on in the courts today. But that's, yeah. Anyway, next slide. So Willie, are you online?
Yes, I am.
All yours.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be talking about incident data, specifically ways that USB is trying to improve the data quality of incident data. And there are some new data reporting requirements from the 2025 legislative session that just want to keep you all up to date with. So just some context, there is something called the 3A work group at USBE, and this title is taken from goal 3 of the superintendent annual mission and regarding safe and healthy schools. Specifically, the 3A work group supports districts and schools in creating and maintaining conditions for a safe and healthy learning environment. And this work group was tasked to help improve data quality for incident data. And if you could go to the next slide. Part of the reason why we were tasked with this is, as many of y'all heard, over the past 3 years, other and disruption has been the most reported category. They make up collectively about half of the incidents being reported through the School Disciplinary Law Enforcement Action Report. That is an annual report through 53E3516. And so, and on the next slide, the way USB leadership decided to go about one way to tackle of improving data quality is maybe some clarification was needed for infraction codes, because LAs have reached out to us saying, what does this mean again? Or would you have any resources? And so starting back really earlier than 2023, but fall 2023, we started drafting some definitions of what each infraction code would mean. You can see phase 2, phase 3, and right now we're about phase 4, where we've, after reaching out to LEAs and receiving feedback through them through a focus group last fall, we've incorporated feedback and we're trying to finalize definitions. And this summer or later, actually next week, we're planning to share these updates to the Data Governance Board for review and approval. And so what that is going to look like, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that right now in the Utrecht specs, this is what you typically get when you start looking up infraction types by primary infraction. Through conversations and meetings, it was tentatively decided that we are going to provide these definition resources, if you go to the next slide, as an appendix format. So these will be more for the everyday people like principals and secretaries who are actually entering the data information, but this is also just so that LA administrators are aware of this resource as well. So it'll all be in the same place, but it'll be as an appendix format. So it won't mess up the tidiness of the tables, but it'll look something like this, where you'll have like a definition, what are some resources, and where is that referred to in code, statute, or rule. Again, what's the significance of this and why bother doing that? Again, we're just having definition resources available for people provides the context that LA level Utrecht administrators to better train faculty and staff as well. There was a knowledge gap identified between the LA level Utrecht administrators and then the faculty and staff entering the incident data. So this is supposed to help assist with LA Utrecht administrators provide training on data entry. I believe the last update I have is the 2020 legislative session passed 2 bills that's going to impact incident data collection, specifically Senate Bill 170, School Discipline Amendments, and Senate Bill 223, Public Education Bullying Amendments. I'll start with Senate Bill 170. These are regarding to emergency safety interventions. Right now, we currently collect, was there a physical restraint used and was seclusion used or occurred? Specifically in Senate Bill 170, they are requiring these approximately 6 additional aspects. From conversations we've had, these should already have been collected by the LEA regarding ESIs, but they just haven't been reported out to USBE. And so we are working with IT and other additional staff to set this up so that it can be started to be collected through Utrecht. So just letting you all know, this is coming out relatively within the timeframes that are anticipated. But some of the items are like incident outcomes, the duration, the stated purpose. We are seeking some clarification on what does alternative intervention mean, and what counts as relevant training. So we are trying to clarify that, but just letting everyone know here that LAs will be expected to report these out. Some clarification as well. This is now regarding I think I forgot to put the title, but this is now transitioning to Senate Bill 223 regarding the bullying amendments. It's been noted that there is underreporting for victims of bullying. Statute requires that not only should the offender be reported, but also the victim. And so the suggestion right now that we're working on is creating a validation error where once, if the following infraction codes are selected, such as bullying, cyberbullying, hazing, and either harassment infraction types, that there must also be a victim entered. So you should probably be expecting that within the next however long it takes to put that in. We are aware that sometimes a victim may or a subject of bullying may not be of the LA, so we are providing those options to make sure that it won't create an issue. I'm seeing in the comments, will ESI be its own incident type? ESIs are, from my understanding, that's the general category, but we have specific fields that ask about the types of ESIs being collected. So that's already reported, right? Like physical restraint and seclusion, those are 2 types of emergency interventions that are collected. And so Senate Bill 170 is just asking for additional pieces of information. So for example, the duration of an ESI is not supposed to exceed 30 minutes, but the law was written so probably to check to see if LAAs are actually So hopefully that answered your question, Stacy. The next and last piece then regarding that is then abusive conduct was also clarified in relation to bullying, because this was been difficult to collect for a while. And so it clarifies that abusive conduct is when a student bullies staff. And while it still describes that one incident is not normally equivalent to abusive conduct, but by the time it gets reported out, the LA would have had evidence that it has been consistent behavior. And so this should be a new incident field or infraction code that would be created as well to help clarify when students bully staff. Other than that, I believe am I turning it over to Malia? Okay, thank you for your time. Let me know if there's any other questions.
Okay, that's it. So Lily, we have a question. We're gonna give you.
Go for it.
But just on those new reporting requirements, I'm assuming that's for next school year that we're gonna require to report that new information, or is that for the current school year? And in either case, it's gonna necessitate new fields in U-Trex. Do we have a timeline on when we'll see those show up in the specification so we can get our SIS vendors working on adding them?
Say next year, you're talking 2025, 2026.
Yes.
So Willie, do you want to answer that?
I can attempt to answer that, Erin. Let me know if I misspoke. My understanding to that question is when, or let me repeat to make sure I understood. You're asking when do we need to start reporting it out in order for you all to prepare for the SISs? My understanding is that we at USB are building that on our side first, and then LEAs will need to adjust SISs on y'all's end. So that should take what, usually 18 months still, even though the log obviously goes in effect, what, next month or something like that. Is that correct, Erin? How the timeline works?
Yes, so expectations. One, you'll see it updated probably in the summer U-Trex specification with the timeline behind it. It sounds like, according to what Willie just said, is there's an allowance to let the 2025, 2026 year for your systems to completely update. Maybe even submit the new fields, but then in the 2026, 2027 would be a full. Does that work? Okay, so again, expect updates in the summer U-Trex specification at the soonest that you'll be seeing this. Cliff and his team will be working on the SIF side of things to make sure it's all ready. Does that work? Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, next slide, please.
Thank you.
Okay, so my first item is a reminder about a new exit code that we have available. U-Trex is able to receive it. If you go to the next slide. The AS exit code, so it's another way to report a student who's transferring to adult ed. The difference between the AE and the AF exit code. The AE student, you are no longer have any responsibility for that student. The AS code are students who the LEA is still gonna retain some form of responsibility for the student by providing special education services for the student who's enrolled in adult ed. And the reason we needed that different code is because those kiddos who the LEA is still providing special ed services to should not count as a dropout for that LEA. So you want to make sure you use the AS code when that's the case, that they don't have to count as a dropout. The AE code is going to be a dropout, no matter what the scenarios. So this information here is what's going to show up in the specifications in August when the next version of it is available. In the meantime, to go to the next slide, the U-Trex is already updated to be able to receive the AS code. So you'll want to check with your SIS, make sure that they're aware that they should add this code as something for you to be able to report. And And as soon as you're able to, go ahead and provide training and try to start getting that code used. The AS code, like I said, it won't be a dropout. So in the cohort graduation rate, the AS code is going to count as a continuing student. So that's neither a dropout nor a graduate. The federal graduation code reference has already been updated. So that's on the data and statistic reports page on the graduation and dropouts tab. Scroll all the way to the bottom and you find that, and that's a big table that has every exit code and high school completion status code and how it works out to in the cohort graduation rate. At the moment, we don't have any plans to add any validations specifically on the AS code. If you'll go to the next slide, please. Oh, whoops, sorry. I guess I had another slide in other presentations that I'm remembering. But we will be doing checks on the AS code with the adult ed department, just to make sure that the AS code is only being used for students who are actually attending enrolled in adult ed. Yes, please.
So, I mean, this isn't for like students that are, you know, their cohorts coming on, but they're still receiving services under, you know, the 18 or 21. This is more, they're a 10th grade student, but they dropped out to go to the adult ed. However, we're still providing special services. Is that, am I understanding that correct?
So the question is if this code would be used for post-high students, or if it's more just for students who are still within their cohort period, if I summarize that correctly. And we want you to use this for any person who transfers to adult ed and you're still providing services, even if it's a post-high student. And that's because, we do have some special ed exeter data that we report to the federal government that, includes post-high students. And so it will make a difference in your special ed exeter data. And even though it is past the point where it'll make a difference in the cohort rate, we still want that exeter data to be correct.
And then if they don't enroll in an adult ed, they just take the GED back. Because you said you're gonna be, you know, processing the data with the adult ed people.
Yeah.
So they won't necessarily show up as being enrolled in an adult ed program, but they will earn the GED.
So the question is this also for students who are just taking a GED test? And I'm actually not familiar with that scenario. Is that a student that you would be providing special services to them while they're doing the GED program?
Honestly, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, you know, all the things with micronephritis. A kid drops out, never enrolls in adult ed, takes GED, but for some reason we are providing sped service. I don't know if that will ever happen. I'm just asking in case it does.
Okay, this is just a hypothetical scenario that none of us knows if it will actually ever happen. Aaron, do you want to take a stab at this?
No.
Aaron doesn't know either. Well,
I'm just thinking too hard.
so I think the thing that it hinges on, is it a student who you're still, they've gone to one of those alternative way of getting a degree programs, adult ed or GED, but your LEA is still retaining the student in the sense that you're providing special ed services. And so it really sucks for your LEA to get the student as a dropout when they're still being provided services by your LEA. So that's kind of the big picture idea of this code.
And just check, yeah, if you're still giving services, that's what matters. And so if there's a weird scenario, ask the question, are we still giving them service?
Well, because honestly, the existence of the code altogether kind of, like, I don't think we have anyone that's enrolled in adult ed and we're providing sped services. If we're providing the services, they're still enrolled, as far as I know. Like, I don't know that we would ever need it at all, so I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of scenarios, yeah.
Yeah, we do hear from LEAs that they have this scenario, this exact scenario happening, that the student is enrolled in adult ed and the LEA is providing special ed services for that student. So it really does happen. And those LEAs have reached out to us and said, hey, the student is counting as a dropout. I thought they weren't supposed to count as a dropout. So we're offering finally a solution for these students to not have to count as a dropout. Okay, are there any questions online or anything else about the AS code? Okay, so, my next section of my updates is, we have some forthcoming changes to the Scrum CCW detail UTREX report. And that is one of the ones listed under December 1 reports, but as Callista mentioned earlier, some of those reports are also still useful year-round, even though it's listed under specific submission time period. And the Scrum CCW detail is exactly in that group of reports. The only thing that really kind of makes the Scrum CCW detail a December report is that there's this one column that says included totals, and if it has a yes, that student gets included in your December 1 child count data. And if it has a no, the student is not included in your December 1 child count data. Otherwise, that Scrum CCW detailed report is useful year-round. And your special ed directors have access to it if they have the appropriate role in Data Gateway. So they can use that report, they can log into UTREX reports, and then they can use that to check if all of the students' Scrum records that they're expecting to be in UTREX are actually showing up in UTREX. And then at year end, they can use it to account for every student, and then in some cases to see what the student's exit status is. So, a couple problems with this report that I've been for a long time hoping to be able to eventually improve upon. That we're getting around to it this year. I don't know if it'll be available by year end, but it'll definitely be available before next December 1. So the first one is, that included columns, included totals column. If it says no, in an ideal scenario, they're going to be able to go through and look at other columns in that report and figure out the reason why the student isn't included in the totals, right? But there's a couple scenarios where a student would be excluded from the totals that isn't indicated in this report. We just don't have a column for that field. So we're going to add a couple columns to help with that a little bit. The school of record no is something that can cause a student to not be included in December 1 total. And we're going to add that to this report. And then also if a student has a level 2 fatal validation error. So we're going to add a column that indicates if they have a level 2 error. And then, let's see. Yeah, so next slide, please. Okay, so the next problem, so we have some Scrum records that are just flat out not even included in that report. And so if it's not in there, how is your special ed director supposed to figure out why it's not included in there? So we're updating this report to not filter any Scrum records out. Currently it has a filter, it only includes Scrum records for students whose age calculates between 3 and 22. So if there's a typo on the birth date and the student's age is calculating as 2 instead of 7, they'll be able to tell once we get these records added into the report, because there's a birthday column and there's an age column. So they'll be able to, if it says no, they'll be able to look at those columns and see the age says 2. I know the student is 2. Let me look at the birth date. Oh, we swapped 2 of the numbers, entered them backwards. Easy fix. They can fix it themselves. They don't have to come to you to help them troubleshoot it. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then the final problem is unfortunately one that we don't have a solution for. So they'll still need your help in troubleshooting this for students who are missing from the Scrum CCW detail report, which is when a student has a level 1 fatal error, either on the Scrum record or on a record that's above it in the hierarchy. So if the whole district record has a problem, all student records are blocked from UTREX. If the student record has a problem, all of the students' program records are blocked from UTREX. So that's kind of how the hierarchy works. So if your special ed director comes to you and says, I can't find this kiddo in the Scrum CCW detail report, do they have a fatal error? They're really not just asking you about Scrum fatal errors, they're also asking about fatal errors that would block the student on other records, the student enrollment record, the student list record, et cetera. So yeah, you'll still, so it'll report will be better, it still won't be perfect as a standalone document. But yeah, we're fixing what we can. Next slide, please. Okay, and then one thing of improved functionality that I wanted to see in this report. Currently, the report includes the SCRAM exit code as well as the student's high school completion status code if they have one. But it doesn't give the enrollment exit code. And sometimes the student's final cohort graduation status or their, event dropout rate, which is just for that school year, if they end up being a dropout, that sometimes that comes from the exit code, the school exit code. So special ed directors aren't able to use this report to go through and identify every student that's gonna end up counting as a dropout. So we're gonna add the school exit code to this report. And so that'll give them, more information, help them identify students who are single year dropouts, event dropouts, things like that. Next slide, please. Okay, so the impact of the updates, so for the December 1 submissions, like I said, this report's gonna be a more useful tool as a standalone document for them to troubleshoot their December 1 counts if they're not showing up, if the count isn't adding up the way they expect it to. And then as far as the fields that are in this, if it's wrong, they can fix it themselves. They don't have to have your help in fixing it. And then but we still have to work together on those level 1 failures. Next slide, please. Okay, and then for the year-end submission, the report now will give them more information that they'll need to be able to determine those dropouts and then graduation rates and students that they need to follow up on the following fall, graduation pending, things like that. Okay, so my next part of my presentation, we have three new fields we're going to be adding to the SCRAM record. And this is so that we can roster your alternate assessment participants through API to a teacher. So it'll save your LEA's steps in rostering in DLM. We'll be able to plug that teacher information right into DLM for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so like I said, what the goal is to be able to roster through the API and eliminate manual rostering, which is very time consuming and involves entering more fields in DLM than what you're gonna end up having to enter in the SCRAM record. You will still have to create teacher accounts in DLM, but the remainder of the work for rostering is gonna be done through the API. And then a benefit of this is if you enter your teacher IDs early in the SCRAM record, early in the school year, it'll give you some value added benefits throughout the year, some functionality, things like, teachers will be able to access student score reports earlier in the school year. And then teachers will be able to begin administering alternate assessment benchmarks earlier. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what the three new fields are gonna be. There's one for each subject area because there are scenarios where it's gonna be a different teacher administering the different subject area alternate assessment tests. So unfortunately, we can't just collect one field, we have to collect three. And these are gonna be conditionally required. So that means we are gonna have some validations on this, which the main one is if the student's SCRAM record is marked as is 1% and they're in a grade level that gets sent to DLM grades 3 through 11, then you're going to be required to enter data into these fields. Next slide, please. So yeah, it'll trigger, yeah, that's what I said. And then a second validation, we'll check to see if if the Cactus ID that was entered is currently a valid Cactus ID in Cactus. Okay, Okay, so, next up, so I have the SIF mapping added to this presentation. And so that's what you need to give to your SIS developers to start working on adding the field in your SIS. We have not started the work on adding this to be able to receive it in U-Trex. So that'll be coming up. Hopefully, we'll have it in place by the October 1 submission period. We're not gonna try to get it in place by end of year. There's just too much going on. You'll see the SIF mapping and information about this field in these fields in the October publication of the U-Trex specifications. And information about these fields is gonna be shared with assessment directors in the next AD meeting and with special ed directors in their next special education administrators meeting. Which I believe is not until August or September. Next. Okay, and so this is the SIF mapping. You'll get a copy of this presentation in the next week or two whenever Data and Statistics is able to send out the notes and the presentation and everything after this data conference. Okay, any questions about that? Online? Okay. My next topic is about the annual performance determination, which I introduced, I believe, in January. So special ed used to have the results-driven accountability, which was the big annual accountability. And we've revamped that and we're calling it annual performance determinations now. So those have all come out. And if your LEA has certain tiers of the determination, they'll be required to come to a data and action planning session this summer. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what that is. Slide, please. Okay, so the state is required to make determinations for every LEA basically on how you're performing and compliance as far as meeting the requirements of IDEA. And if you're interested in learning more about the regulations on that, this right here is your link, and it's section D of those regulations. So we have a variety of measures that we are required to score you on, and then a variety of measures that we are encouraged to include in the scoring matrix. And the result of all of the scores is you get one of these 4 determinations: needs requirements, needs assistance, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. Next slide, please. Okay, so we recently issued those reports. They were sent via UPIPS and they went to your special ed director as well as your district superintendent or your charter director. The report outlines the measures and then tells you what your annual determination is. And we hope that LEAs are gonna review the report carefully and consider that as they make plans for the coming school year. But for the LEAs that have a needs intervention or needs substantial intervention, you're gonna be required to come to a data and action planning session this summer. Next slide, please. So in the planning session, it's gonna be an all-day thing. We're gonna spend the first part of the day digging into data that USBE provides, as well as data that we want LEAs to come with from your own local data that the state doesn't have. And so that is the main reason why I'm here presenting to you guys about this today, because you're probably gonna need to help them with gathering and preparing data for this, and may even be invited to participate. So there's 5 different sessions scheduled, and the way to register is through Midas. And if you go to the next slide. So what we want is a team to come together. We want people from various roles across the LEA And we feel that the more people we have from various parts of the LEA, it will be a more comprehensive plan and analysis of data. And we need every team member who's gonna come to register through Midas. So these are some of the roles that we suggest LEAs consider coming. So special ed director, of course, a data director, or some sort of administrator who's familiar with your available data and data collection systems, data sources, things like that. Curriculum directors, both in gen ed and special ed, assessment directors, instructional coaches, behavior support representatives, building administrators. There's going to be a little bit of an emphasis on schools that are currently designated for school improvement. And we'd love to see some teacher representatives, both from general ed and from special ed.
I have a question.
Yes.
How will our special ed directors know that? Is it our responsibility to tell them if you're not meeting again with them until August? Or will you guys send something out to them as well?
So we announced this in the last special ed directors meeting, in April. So they already know about this. We sent out, flyers, and then any of the LEAs who are in one of that needs assistance, or needs intervention or needs substantial intervention, they've gotten an email directly about this. And I don't remember the number of LEAs that are going to be required to attend this, but a lot of the LEAs that are required have already started registering people in Midas for this. So, yeah, so word is out already.
So can we follow up? So if you haven't heard from your special ed director. Yeah, maybe, right?
Erin's suggesting that if you're a data manager who hasn't heard from your special ed director, it means you're off the hook. I jump to that conclusion. I would follow up with your special ed director and let them know that if you are one of the LEAs in one of those two statuses, hopefully you're willing and able to support them in gathering the data that would help make this a more robust analysis and discussion. As well as maybe even be willing to attend or send an immediate subordinate to attend.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, so yeah, the data. So, USBE, we're gonna provide a bunch of aggregates at LEA and school level, as well as a bunch of demographic groupings. And then also student level data to be able to dig into during that morning part of the session. But we also want LEAs to dig into data that USBE doesn't have. And these are just a few examples. We're still kind of working on developing a really comprehensive list of suggestions of data to bring. So we'll send that out closer to the sessions. But I know this takes time to gather data, so I wanted to give you as much heads up as possible. So suggestions at this point include local assessment and progress monitoring data, IEPs, behavior data, curriculum and standards information, course definitions and assignments, staffing and budgeting, professional learning information, and if you have additional ideas, go for it. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, and then this is the incident data that Erin said he's excited about, so. Okay, discipline data, we have to make some updates. Slide, please. So as you're probably aware, UTREX only collects information on a single discipline per incident. But in reality, a student involved in an incident, their discipline could involve multiple types of disciplines, and sometimes more than one of the same type of discipline. So we need to work on our data collection to be able to get all of that discipline information. So just, an example we got from an LEA in this scenario was a student who had, they had a behavioral incident and then they were put in in-school suspension for the remainder of that day. And then after that, they had a few days where they were placed on out-of-school suspension while the school did an expulsion hearing. And then after the outcome of the expulsion hearing, the student then had a length of time of being expelled. So that was 3 different types of disciplines that UTREX needs to be able to collect all of this information. Next slide. Okay, so making this more complicated, so under special circumstances in federal code, there are a limited set of scenarios where a student with an IEP can be removed to an interim alternative educational setting by a hearing officer or a unilateral removal by school personnel. And in some cases, well, the hearing officer removal, anyway, there are some cases where the hearing officer could do the initial removal, which is limited to 45 days, and then determine that they need to extend that. And they can extend that up to 3 additional times, so a total of 180 days that they, based on the hearing officer's decision, the student is placed in an interim alternative educational setting. So when it's based on a hearing officer's decision, it's not a change in placement. A change in placement is something that the IEP team would have decided. So because it's not a change in placement, it's a hearing officer removal, it gets reported as a disciplinary removal. And ideally, we would be able to collect information on these as up to 4 separate removals, 4 45-day removals. We wouldn't want you to have to report the 45-day removal as a 90-day removal once the 45-day got extended to a second 45-day, because the removal isn't allowed to be more than 45 days, right? So then if you're reporting it as 90, then it's like, oh, what is this LEA doing? We're removing the student for 90 days. It's only supposed to be a maximum of a 45-day removal. So we want to keep those, we want to preserve the integrity of what's actually happening with those removals by being able to collect. We're now up to at least 6 disciplinary removals we need to be able to collect for a student in this scenario possibly. Next slide. Okay, so currently we have some SIS systems and LEAs that have figured out workaround for UTREX only being able to collect 1 disciplinary removal. So they're, if a student has more than 1 removal for an incident, they're reporting it as multiple incidents. And then, and so that they can get all the removal data support submitted to UTREX, which is fantastic that LEAs are concerned about making sure we get all that removals data. That's very important. But it's not ideal that you had to do it this way, because then the incident numbers are inflated. So ideally, we need to fix UTREX. We need to be able to collect the data accurately. Yeah, and then I looked at the data. Sometimes the student has multiple removals of the same type. Sometimes there's different infraction types in one incident, and each infraction type gets tied to a different removal. There's all kinds of interesting stuff going on. But it'd be better if we were able to have that all nested under one single incident ID. Next slide, please. So this is what the current discipline data collection fields look like. We have 4 fields to collect information on 1 single removal. So we don't want to just times that by 6. We don't want to do 24 fields to collect information on 6 removals. We want to do better than that. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is one proposal, 12 fields to collect information on 6 removals. And this way of doing it, some of you who remember Paula, who recently retired in January, Paula has been asking for this for years. She wants you guys to be able to collect the discipline method type in a way that matches the SIP specifications. And so doing it this way would allow you to do that. And then, so we have 1 field for collecting the discipline method ID, and that with or without services, in and out of school would all be embedded. This one field would replace what used to be 3. And then the second field would be for collecting the information on the number of days. We would, probably make so they would probably just be discipline method type 1 and days of removal type 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and 5, 6. And just the first one would be required and everything else would be optional for the discipline method. And then number of days would be conditionally required. If the discipline method isn't no action, then the number of days would be required. Next slide, please. Here's another proposal, which, so for the first few types of removals, it would be 8 fields total instead of 24 or 12. For the first few types of removals where we don't need to be able to distinguish between the separate events like we need to be able to do with the hearing officer removals. So those first types, we would just ask you to take, like if the student had 3 in-school suspensions because each suspension was tied to a different infraction, you would just sum it up. If they had 3 one-day in-school suspensions, you would just submit it as a 3-day in-school suspension with this suggestion. And then we have a field for each of those extensions of the hearing officer removal. And those we would expect to never exceed 45 days. Okay, so we don't want to move forward with this without getting your input. So I have a survey here to hopefully get us some more information to help guide our decision. It's 9 questions. A few of them are open-ended questions, but most of them should be pretty quick. Just pick a couple options. If you know your discipline data reporting system in your SIS well, then it should be less than 5 minutes to fill out. If not, I encourage you to work with someone who is more frequently the one who's entering the data to help to collaborate and answer the survey. And am I scheduled for my presentation time?
Oh, yeah. 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
Yeah, you're okay. Okay, can we take, do you guys, are people wanting to fill this out? Can we take a few minutes to fill it out? You'd rather fill it out later?
Fine.
Okay, no problem, we can do. Yeah, no, that's great. You want to go talk to people about it before you fill it out. That's great. Okay, I think that's my last slide.
Let me add one more thing, kind of correlates with all this. Right now, on the S1 record, there is excused, unexcused, and then suspended or something else. We're gonna take that last one deprecated. And the reason why is I've talked with a number of LEAs saying, is your disciplinary action stuff tying in with your, with what your your attendance secretaries are doing? And the answer almost uniformly was no. And when we were looking at the data, we could not make them line up at all. So we're using the disciplinary timing on to look at the suspension, expulsion, information. So instead of using the enrollment one, the S1, just like giving you some additional information. So that will, through a process, will be deprecated.
We also.
Okay, we'll work on this one. I'm just adding to what Maureen was saying. Thank you.
And I haven't set a deadline for when I'm gonna close the survey yet, but maybe something like 2 weeks from whenever the email goes out. So the email that this presentation comes to you after today, maybe 2 weeks after that, is that enough time to get a 5-minute survey filled out? Great. Okay, let's check next slide, make sure I didn't have anything else. Okay, great, I'm done. Lynn?
Thank you. How's everybody doing after lunch? All right. But maybe not just now. Hope everybody's digging in there. We've talked about a lot of details a lot of very specific things that need a lot of, focused attention. I'll ask for your attention for this one too, but maybe you could just lean back in your chair a little bit and sip on your water, or your soda, whatever, and enjoy. We've taken a closer look at students who drop out of high school. I'll define that for you and show you what that looks like. I'll take the next slide, please. But we'll take a little break from maybe focusing in on things you have to do, and I'll invite you to think about this a little bit, and, at the end, I'll ask you for your input. Maybe you have some other ideas of how we might think about this, and what other questions we might ask. So the purpose of the analysis I'm going to show you is just to describe the educational experience of 3 cohorts of students who dropped out of high school. And those are the general categories of things we're going to look at. All right, so you probably know this already from paying careful attention to high school completion status, but students are expected to graduate 4 years after they first enroll in 9th grade. So 3 years after 10th grade and 2 after 11th and so forth. And we assign students to these 4-year cohorts. We're gonna look at 3 of those. That one, did I get too forward? Can we go back one, did I miss one? Okay, we're good, thanks, sorry, I lost the plot there for a second, I'll take one more slide. Thank you. So these are this is the definition of students who drop out, the way we're treating this. I won't read through each of those, but you could look at it more closely later on another slide. Thank you. All right, so this is what we did. We took this, these three 4-year cohorts that I just described. We looked at 3 years, 22 through 24. And we joined the list of those students who dropped out with their enrollment data, their incident and discipline data, and their end of year test data. And for the characteristics that might change across those 4 years, like say low income, student could be low income 1 year and not the next. We counted them as low income if they were low income at any point during those 4 years, same with those other kind of characteristics that could change like that. And I'm just gonna show you a bunch of percentages, a bunch of within group percentages. Thank you. These are the counts of students who were in this group, right around a little more than 5,000 every year. So all the percentages I show you in this next half dozen slides or so, it's just percentages of students in this group. So this is 5,000 or so students we're looking at here. So this is what it looks like, the percent of students who dropped out each year by cohort type. The x-axis is the school year. So you could think about this loosely as grade level. I didn't use grade level because there's a bit of movement across grades and it wasn't a clean thing to look at. But if you consider, for cohort year 22, that would be what their 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years, generally speaking. You can see how that's trending. It looks like students seem to be dropping out a little bit sooner each year. Having this being the first time I looked at these data, I was a little bit surprised that such a great percentage of students dropped out before their senior year. Next slide. And that's what I'm trying to highlight here, that it was nearly half, especially as you get into the cohort years for 23 and 24 of students who are dropping out before their expected graduation year. So that first bar is the 3 years prior to their graduation year. So essentially 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. Thank you, Nicole. Well, this is a demographic breakdown of the race and ethnicity categories. There's a few notes across the bottom of the statewide percentages. 54% of these students who dropped out were white, compared to, say, this is 71.2% of the state average, total enrollment average. But males are making up the greatest proportion. I think they probably do in our enrollment data too, although I couldn't tell you the exact percentage off the top of my head. But it looks like females are catching up a little. We're good, thank you. It's good timing. I think this one's worth slowing down just a little bit, especially to look at the first several in that group. These are just some characteristics that we grabbed a hold of. So that first one, for example, is mobile. I think this gives us some specific groups that we might consider focusing on. I mean, this is saying that's over 67% of the students who dropped out in 2024 were mobile. So all of your mobile students, no surprise, are at risk, I think, and may need additional support. It might be something we're thinking about a little bit. Again, we're trying to make some leaps from some descriptive statistics, but I think that stands to reason. You can see low income there at 51%. In the next slide, we'll look at this over the course of the 3 years, just for those first four. And you can see the top line is mobile. They were at 64.8% in 2022 and up to 67.3% in 24. So everything trending up there except this, I believe this is, sorry, I'm having a hard time making out the colors with this view. I believe this is special ed.
Looks like it.
That's the only one that takes a kind of a sharp change there, switching places with English learners who took a drop. Next slide, please. All right, so I grouped these three things into a category called student behaviors, if you will. The first one's chronically absent. So 70% of these students were chronically absent. And that seems no surprise considering eventually they quit going. I guess they were practicing. Then you have over 10% received an incident and over 3% were suspended or expelled. That's greater than the state percent in that year, which was 6.9 for incidents and 2.7 for discipline. So, I mean, no surprise, I suppose, that students who are dropping out are having some behavioral issues in schools potentially. And here's a look at the students who dropped out by behavior in cohort year over the course of 3 years. Again, most things generally seem to be increasing. There's a little bit of wobble for chronic absence, but still higher than it was 3 years ago. And then I just have 3 more slides. This is this group's 9th grade proficiency levels. First for language arts. Now, I've broken this into 4 proficiency levels. You probably know already that this would be not proficient and this would be proficient. So if you were to kind of roughly add those together, what are we looking at? About 20% were proficient. In this case, compared to a state percent, that was 42% proficient. I mean, no surprise, again, students who drop out are not going to be probably performing fantastically on end of year standardized tests. But this is what the numbers look like. So here's the same for math, same look there. And finally, science. All right, and I just have one more slide for you. I'm interested to know, this is kind of our first look at this. We got curious and took a look, and I'm interested to hear from you as someone who's maybe a little bit more involved in day-to-day operations in your LEA. What other questions should we be asking? What else would you want to know about students who drop out?
So I work in adult ed too. I wear little hats, but one thing that I would like to know is whether their parents completed high school, because I see that as a trend. And sometimes it might be beneficial or something like that to somehow have an incentive for the parent to complete as well as the student that drops out.
Great question. Yeah, I wish we had those data and could answer that easily.
By the way, the governor's office sent me an email 2 weeks ago saying, hey, do you have this data? And I'm like, no. He said, how do we get this data?
So the question that was just asked?
Right.
Excellent.
When you can say that, he brought this up, did they have a sibling or that who dropped out previously?
Also a great question. David, would you mind jotting down these questions? That's something I think we can look into. Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Oh, you get it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, please. Other ideas, things you want to know?
Yeah, maybe what to look at is if they have a single guardian or if they're in a two guardian home.
Oh, good question. So if they're in a single guardian or if they have two guardians in the house.
Is there something online?
Yeah, I don't, what grade they started, they may need to specify, they said what grade. What grade they started school, I don't know if they're referring to high school or like, did they start in kindergarten? So if you can provide clarification online.
All right, thanks for the questions. So yeah, I'm just interested to collaborate. I'll give you another few seconds here. If you have ideas, we might pursue this question a little bit more deeply, maybe move towards trying to predict dropout based on some of the characteristics that we just looked at here. Anyone else, ideas?
Is there any LEA doing your own analysis study right now?
Love to team up with you.
I'm looking at Salt Lake.
I'm sure we are.
All right, thank you for allowing me some time to share that with you. Appreciate it. I don't think that's. Dr. Stephanie Sue, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Rick. So in the next several slides, we're going to introduce you guys about the chronically absent dashboard that we have developed recently. Next, please. So chronically absent is a little bit mouthful for me. So to simplify, I will be using the CA to represent the chronically absent through the rest of my presentation. So pardon me. So back to the dashboard. The dashboard is currently published through the Tableau Public. Thank you, David, for helping out. So here is a link in the slides. You can click the link to access it without creating any accounts, I believe. We do plan to publish it on Data Gateway. It may take some time, so please stay tuned. So what information are you going to get from this dashboard? So this dashboard demonstrates the CA trends from school year 2018 to 2024. It gives you some option for the student groups you can choose from to take a deeper look. Also, it reflects consistent data points with the CA annual report we publish every year on our website. So in summary, it can help you explore the CA trend by state, LEA, school, grade level, or in combination. You can also take it as a visual aid tool for CA annual report if you would like. Next slide, please. Okay, let's take a closer look. So you on the top, you can see there are 4 student groups you can choose from. If you keep the default settings of filters on the right side or set them to all, you will get a state level CA trend for that specific student group. For this situation, in this screenshot, it represents the state level CA trend for all students. So you may notice here is a line chart. You may notice there are some fluctuations in the past 7 years. It starts from, I guess it's a 13% in school year 2018, and then reached the lowest point at 9% in 2020, and then had a sharp increase and peaked at 27% in 2022, followed by gradually decline at 24% in school year 2024. So another note you may want to pay attention is despite the downward trend after the pandemic year of 2022, the CA rates
still remained much higher than, they were, in pre-pandemic levels. Okay, next slide. Okay, next. Next, please. All right, you talked about that. Okay, so let's take a quick look for the other three student group. Now it shows you the economically disadvantaged student group. From this line chart, you can see it followed the exactly same trend as the trend for all students in the state. Just with much higher CA rates for each year. Next slide, please. Special education student group has the same situation and has the same trend with much higher rates. Next slide, please. Same thing applies to the English language learner student group. So all of those student groups follow the same trend to the state level trend for all students. Next slide, please. Okay, so among these groups, economically disadvantaged students had the highest CA rates compared to the other two student groups. Next slide, please. Okay, here are some tips on how to manipulate the filters on the dashboard. So there are 3 filters that help you explore the CA trends at more detailed levels beyond the state level. You will have the LEA, school, and the grade level filters. How to apply those filters? You have some options. So these filters can be applied individually or in combination to help you analyze the data more comprehensively. So to apply them individually, you can just simply choose a value for one filter and set all to the remaining 2 filters. If you want to apply them in combination, you can choose values for 1, 2, or 3 filters and set all for the remaining ones. I think that will conclude my presentation. I'll give it over to Calista.
Okay, I am just gonna be talking about some membership and enrollment frequently asked questions. Over the last few weeks / months, I've just been getting a lot of similar emails. And this topic can sometimes promote a lot of additional questions, so if any of my colleagues want to jump in, if any of those questions come up, we can try to address those here, or we can also get back to you in the future, because enrollment can be tricky with all the different scenarios that happen. So that's my just precursor to the presentation. I don't have all the answers. But based on some of your emails, I've taken some commonly asked situations, which I'll talk about at the end. In the beginning, I'll just go over our general membership information, which hopefully will help address some of these issues. So you can go to the next slide. So we talk about this, we try to do it annually, and I don't think we've done this always at the April data conference. Sometimes we'll do it more towards year end. But I decided to include it here just because we are getting a lot of questions as students enroll online more, at different LEAs while going to your LEA or in SOEP. And so there can be a lot of questions around membership and how you report enrollment. Go to the next slide, please. So anywhere that there is rule from legislation or the UTREC specifications, there is a link that you can directly go to that to get more detailed information. So when you get these slides, you can just click on those links and go and read more details about these. But generally, the membership rule that is in R277-419, and it's called Student Membership Calculations, allows for students to have 180 days of regular membership in a school year. There are a few exceptions to that. And then starting back in the 2017 school year, the board rule, has been enforced through membership proration, and that is applied with your finalized year-end data. So you don't necessarily see that prorated membership because we do that after it's finalized in the database and then we prorate it. Okay, next slide. That same rule also clarifies that a student is only eligible for 180 days, with these exceptions that are, in these bullet points. So the exceptions are a student who has an early graduation plan, and for that to be reported in UTREX, you have to have the early graduation flag, checked, and that is on the S1 record. Once that flag is checked, it basically bypasses the validation to report more than 180 days. And so students that have that early grad plan checked can have a number greater than 180 reported and no fatal error will trigger. The next exception is a student who transfers between LEAs. They're eligible for a total of 170 days plus 10. It's a buffer. To allow for overlap between enrollments. So sometimes it takes a few days when a student leaves, and then when the next LEA actually gets them entered, that they're entry date. The next exception is student who transfers to or from a year-round school. They are eligible for up to 205 days of regular membership, and that applies both within your LEA and then across LEAs. And then the last exception is a student who transfers to or from a school that has with a schedule approved exception, and that comes from USPD. They are eligible for up to 220 days of regular membership. So those are the exceptions. And then here is kind of a hierarchy. What if a student qualifies for more than one of those exceptions? This kind of shows you what will qualify them for the highest allowable membership in that order. And then just as a note, exceptions are not combined to increase the allowable membership. Any questions on that before I go forward? Okay, we will be sending all these slides so you can review them and think about questions, because I know this is kind of fast. Here are some proration exclusions. So basically the following records are excluded from that regular membership funding calculation. And therefore they're excluded from the proration calculations. And these are the Scram times C records, YIC times C records, School of Record No records, preschool records, private or homeschool records, and foreign or out of state records. And that is also a common list of student records that I commonly get asked in like your school summary report, why are these counts not matching what I see in my SAS? It's often because they fall in one of those categories. So just remember that those students are not necessarily going to show up on that school summary count. All right, next slide. Okay, so for our validations in UTREX around membership, the S1.012 validation, it is a level 1. And as was talked about earlier, S1 is the student record. And 012 is that error code. So that will prevent a student from having more than 180 days of membership within a single school. And again, the exception is students with that early grad flag. If a student has an early grad flag or plan, then please make sure that, or if they have the early grad plan, please make sure that the flag is checked, because that is UTREX's way of knowing that they can have greater than 180 days of membership. Otherwise, you will trigger a fatal error. If the student does not have that plan, then you need to adjust the numbers so that it is not greater than 180. If you don't adjust that, then the state will automatically prorate it. So, okay, next slide. There is also level 2 warning. And by the way, on these membership count or the totals for membership enrollment counts and these validations, these are all things that we do review when we do the courtesy data review for year end. So we look pretty closely at all of these things that I'm talking about. And we will note things if we see things in your data that we would like you to check. But there are these level 2 membership warnings. These will tell you when a student has more than their allowable membership across multiple LEAs. And so that's why it's level 2. So I get a lot of questions on how you can clear these. In your LEA's data, the best that you can do is check that your entry and exit dates are correct. Sometimes you cannot force another LEA to fix their dates. You can nicely reach out, whether that's a call or email, and I know I've heard varying feedback on this. I mean, we would hope that everyone can work nicely together, and sometimes maybe there's just misunderstandings and communicating with other LEAs about these types of issues, but if you've done all that you can to reach out, and another LEA is just not changing what they have entered. Again, the warning will stay. Please just make sure that your data is correct. You also want to make sure that your membership field has been entered correctly or calculated in your SS correctly. And so the example is if a student's only taking half a schedule, please don't report full-time membership. And then if the student is attending multiple LEAs, I already talked about this. You can encourage them to report their data correctly, but all we can do is the same, to encourage everybody to report their data accurately. And then just know there is a proration that will be applied based on the finalized data by all LEAs. Also, you might want to keep in mind that some LEAs, they don't get to clearing these types of warnings until, especially big districts, they have a lot of warnings and errors and students to look at. So it could just be that they haven't gotten to it yet. So when you're contacting them in May, it could be that by July, they'll get that taken care of. So it's something to keep in mind. Here is a reference to board rule on, oh, yes, sir.
On that, why are I thinking that if I submit and I finalize, and then after I do that, they correct their data, that correction doesn't, yeah, you don't see that, I'm not gonna see that correction happen. Do you guys still see it, and so we don't get prorated? I mean, because it seems like there's a lot of times it's said, yeah, until you resubmit, this level 2 error won't clear, even if the other district is fixing the data. Is that, am I correct in thinking?
Yeah, the warning, okay, and tell me if I get the question wrong. The way I understood it was if your LEA has one of those level 2 membership warnings and you've entered all your stuff correctly and then you finalize, but the other LEA hasn't fixed anything on their end yet, how will that proration, how will that affect the end result of the proration and how the validations appear? Is that
It's more, after I finalize, they do fix it.
okay?
So after I finalize, they fix the data, because I've been told that, like, if I submit and I have a level 2 error, and the other district submits something that clears that error, it doesn't actually clear from my dashboard until I resubmit as well, even though it's not my data that changed.
Well, then just,
Is that not the case anymore, or is that, because that is still the case, and how does that happen in this?
are we talking specifically about the membership? Because those are warnings, not errors, but
Oh,
Yeah, it's not like you're talking about fatal.
guess I'm talking about all level 2 things.
all of them do. I mean, I guess it depends if it's the membership, that is a warning, and that will stay as a warning when you finalize your data. Yes, Melinda? Okay, yeah, sure.
So basically, when you finalize your data in Utrex, there's a field that the student has a level 2 fatal error. And the only way for that that check mark in the level 2 fatal error field to go away is if you refinalize and the student doesn't have the check mark when you refinalize. So in the case of a fatal, a level 2 fatal, if you finalize and you have that fatal in place, and then the other LEA fixes their data, you're gonna have to refinalize in order that fatal check mark to go away. A warning doesn't affect the student getting into UTREC, into the finalized data set. They don't have a checkbox in their finalized data with a warning like they do with a fatal. So in this, what she's talking about with the membership proration, it's a warning. So you could finalize with that warning in place, and then the other LEA fixes their membership. And that could result in that the student's membership originally was gonna get prorated, and now it's not gonna get prorated. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You won't know yeah, unfortunately, the way the membership happens, you don't know ever. Yeah, it's all after the fact, and it's not reported somewhere in a report where you can go through with a fine tooth comb. I guess you could compare the Tableau version of SERP with your data, but yeah.
And we don't check those individually either, we just run the process.
I can check some.
But
Involved in that.
individuals, sometimes we check, yeah.
That is also a good, thank you, Malia, and then that's a good, this is an aside, not to do with this necessarily, but, Riley on our team is actually currently working on a new report. We haven't announced it because it's still very much in the works, and so it's not, I don't know that it's gonna be ready by year end, but it's a report basically that would allow LEAs to see dual enrolled students and where they're enrolled, which we have heard would be helpful. Anyway, so that could also help. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, sorry, can you actually go back? I don't know that I actually talked about that. This is just the reference to the student membership calculation, and calculating membership correctly. So, I'll read the underlying part. An LEA shall prorate the student's membership according to the number of hours, periods, or credits which the student was actually enrolled in relation to the number of hours, periods, or credits for which a full-time student would have been enrolled. And then it gives some examples of that. Okay, next slide. If the combined membership reported for a student exceeds the allowable membership, then USB will prorate the membership proportionate to the amount that was reported by each LEA. So we kind of talked about that. If a student is enrolled into this is just the reference to the board rule for that, so I'm not gonna read that. And then we also talked about that's not going to show up on reporting because again, that is done after you finalize your data. Okay, next slide. These slides just have some good examples. For the sake of time, I'm not gonna go over every single one, but I would recommend that you look at these if you're feeling confused about proration at all. Or you can reach out to me directly after the meeting. But there's a few common examples and it explains how the membership would turn out if it was prorated. So you can kind of scroll through the next few slides with examples. And hopefully you guys will be able to review these when we send these out. Okay, so here's just a summary of what we've talked about. Student membership data is recorded by each LEA, and that's in compliance with those board rules that we shared or that are shared in these slides. Before finalizing your year-end data, please just be conscientious of each other. Make sure that every LEA verifies your enrollment data. That means your entry and exit dates, and your membership that's recorded, and especially, I mean, that should be reviewed for everybody, but when you have those level 2 warnings, that's an indication that it needs to be reviewed. So please look at those. I know that some LEAs are really, really worried about clearing all those warnings before they finalize, and so they might reach out, you know, to other LEAs in a frantic, hurry. Just know that, again, those warnings are not blocking records, so you can finalize with them. But we also want the data to be accurate, so please review and fix things where necessary. After all of that data is finalized and in our database, then the proration steps happen. And each LEA will receive their share of allowable membership. All right, next slide. Okay, we've kind of already talked about this, so I'm not going to keep pounding it. So we can go ahead and skip this slide, next slide. Okay, so that's what I have on the generic information regarding membership enrollment and proration. These are the questions that have come in recently that I thought I would just bring to the group, and I can welcome any additional questions. I may not have the answers right here on the spot, as well as comments or ways that other LEAs are approaching these situations. But if you want to go to the next slide. And also keep in mind that some of these terms might look different across SIS systems. But we've gotten a lot of questions about full and part-time student statuses, as well as these different scenarios where a student gets released. And so I believe it's in Aspire, there's the option for home release, academic release, homeschool, SEOP, and then there's the scenario of SOEP. And so the question is, like, how do I report the correct membership percentage for each of these situations? Also, please note that these are just a few examples. This isn't a complete list of all the possible scenarios that you may see. So before I go to what we have sort of responded, does anyone have any feedback or any comments they'd like to make on how your LEA is approaching this? We'd like to hear from you guys on what you're doing. And if not, that's okay, but yes.
Just, what's different from the last two bullets? Like, I mean, they're really different, but it seems like it's the same scenario.
Yeah, I mean, they're two different programs, I guess,
Oh, right, okay.
but yeah, it's sort of the same general scenario.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're pretty close.
So what, I guess I've heard of one of those programs, but not the other one. What's?
Let's say that.
Yeah, like SEOP I've heard of, right?
SEOP is
What's
totally different in my brain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
Thank you. I had to look it up as well because I thought this LA had been a typo, but it is actually
Is it the early graduation?
yes, yeah,
Students Education Opportunity Plan?
yeah.
Did they change the name of it? Is that?
Maybe.
They don't, not familiar with it?
I think if you looked up for a while, smart,
Yeah.
still have.
Maybe that's. I think it's like education opportunity,
Occupation.
occupation.
Education on cable.
Occupational plan. Is that gonna, that we all forgot?
It's one that the council use when they meet with students.
Yeah, it's for early graduation.
Readiness. Student education occupation plan.
Okay.
Okay, you have to repeat all that.
Student Education Occupation Plan, for those wondering what SEOP is. It is not a typo of SOEP. They're two different things. Any, if not, we can just move on, but do any LEAs have anything that they want to share or on how they're handling some of these? Okay, well, we can go to the next slide. So as always, we always refer back to what's in board rule as well as what's in the UTREC specification. We do just want to be clear though that after reading all of that, we don't have clear or really a defined, we don't have definitions for what a full and part-time student are right now. I will say these questions have generated discussion amongst our own teams, and so I have started those conversations with, our finance team as well as, some other people at USBE on, do we need to define those, especially when USEN comes on, what a full and part-time student means, like a definition for that. But right now, we don't have that. Did you have a comment or, yeah?
It's just back to the first side where you're saying, you know, how are we handling it?
Okay.
When we release students, said, okay, we're not expecting you to be in school, right? So if you say home release and academic release, I mean, how are those defined? Basically, if it, particularly at the high school level, a kid says, I don't need to take all 8 classes in order to get my 27 credits to graduate. I only want to take 6 classes, and then so we bump them down, you know, reduce their membership by 25%, say they're only 75% enrolled. But that's because they're not actually enrolled in courses for those time period. If it's anything where we are providing any sort of education services, then we claim it as a course and they're full-time enrolled. But when they're actually, I'm not coming anymore, then, you know, we just withdraw that, or we reduce their membership down appropriately based on how much time they're attending in school. For homeschool, similar thing, you know, because we'll have homeschool students that, hey, mom's not good at math, so she wants me to come to math and everything else I'm gonna do at home. Then we enroll them for one course and they get a prorated membership at whatever, you know, 1.8% enrollment kind of a thing. Or, you know, mom's great at math, but they want to take band, you know, or they're on the football team or something like that. So that's how we do it in our district for those scenarios.
And that sounds about what we have been telling LEAs, but, I've also heard of a few other situations where it's been done a little differently, but that sounds about what, I think the main point that's bolded at the bottom is you can ask, when you're trying to determine how to report things, is your LEA, offering educational services or material or instructional materials to the student in whatever the scenario is? If you are, then you can claim membership, but, if not, then that membership should not be claimed. And then again, there's links and references to all the rules, and more details on this, but it can be vague. And hence why we get all the questions. Some clarifying questions to the previous slide, like what is the difference between homeschool half today and home release? That's what we would ask the LEA, like what, how are you viewing that? What is the intent of the student being released? And again, that really important question is your LEA providing instructional services or materials to the student? So those are just some good questions to keep in mind when considering how you should be reporting the membership. In those rules, there are also allowable reasons, for a student to be released and still have full-time membership. And there's a list that's pretty specific on that. Okay, next slide. I just threw this in here because it's kind of related, and also I don't know that a lot of LEAs have done this. I don't really know. I can ask you guys how many LEAs have actually developed a policy. As part of that, the board rule that's been mentioned, as well as, I don't know that it actually says it in the UTREX specs, but it links to it. So on the student enrollment record in UTREX, we added that enrollment validation type field a few years back. And one of the valid values is the type of enrollment is a learner validated type of enrollment. With that, it is the responsibility of your LEA to develop and follow a policy for how to count enrollment, which does equates to how to claim appropriate membership, and helps with determining if the student is part-time or full-time. I have had LEAs ask, like, do you have an example or how should I write this policy? And we have directed them to talk to our policy team. I also have had LEAs talk to each other to see the types of policies they've written, if LEAs are willing to share that. But just from a, a quick poll, how many LEAs have developed this type of policy, or that that exists?
There's one.
Okay, so that might be something to think about. It's really good to have clear guidance, when parents and students approach you with questions or have situations that you don't know how to handle. It's always good to have that policy in place, and it is a directive of this board role, so. And I don't know if Stephen Harwood is willing to share his policy. You could always, if he's nice enough to share.
It's not super great, because if they're taking an online class, we enroll them.
Okay.
And then how we count attendance is if you interact with that teacher in any way during the week, you're counting attendance for the entire week. And if you go 2 weeks without talking to anyone, then you get the 10-day mark and you get withdrawn. Otherwise, as long as you're, interacting, it could be as simple as sending a chat message, in Canvas once. Hey, you're intentionally entirely, that's our policy for that.
And it's written out, I
Yeah.
assume, okay.
Yep.
Cause I have had a lot of LEAs that will contact me and they want something from me in writing, when in reality, it does need to come from your own LEA. So we can give you some references, but when a parent wants a policy on this specific thing, it's best that it is your LEA's policy. All right, is there a question? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and skip that now, because that sounds like something different, so next slide. Okay, that's actually the end of my presentation. For that online question, do we want to address that now?
I didn't read the whole thing.
Okay. I didn't read it all.
My special ed director is unsure if they have received the IDEA report. What can they contact at USBE to get that report?
I'll put my hand.
She'll respond.
Okay, and I'll turn the time over to Kristen, and please reach out to me if you have any questions regarding all of the membership and enrollment stuff. That's right here.
Okay, I'm in teaching, learning, and licensing, so I have different stuff to talk about. Next slide. Okay, professional license renewals have gone out. Educators have to renew before June 30th. We have sent these monthly. Please don't block them, Ogden. They are not fishing. If you see anything from do not reply licensing at schools.utah.gov, that is us telling your teachers to get off their butts and renew their licenses. Educators who have worked for the past 5 years in education do not need to do the renewal form anymore. That does not mean it automatically renews their license. They still need to do ethics, some legislation, the student data privacy. So they still must go into USIMS and follow the steps and go bleep, 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 yes, and license will be renewed. It is not automatic. Next slide. Schools opening and closing deadlines. We're supposed to get your list of new schools by January 1. So this should have been January 1, 2025 to open up on July 1, 2025. Most of you are really good at that. So, and I don't need to even know the name. You can say temporary school in Eagle Mountain. That is, I had that once for a while till they got the name. I would like to know if your school is closing before June 30th. If you have a change to a school name, I need to have that before June 30th, and we only make it when we roll over to the next school year. The reason for that is if you change the name, the vendor may not know when tests get lost and everything else. Please let us know as soon as possible about school changes. It just makes our life miserable and can impact your funding. So, any questions on that? Okay, next slide. Core code changes, except for one, which I'm gonna talk about in a minute, can all be found here. This site also has where you would, information like if you want to get a new Cactus account, it has everything there. So that is where the new list is and the current, core code list is. Next slide. Okay, so here's the one where you're all getting mad at me. I had nothing to do with it. It was not me. And actually, I tried to get it to start July 1 of 2026, not 2025. But apparently I am not important enough for the legislature to listen to. You now must tell us about packets. We have to now report the packet core code, the credits earned. Was it original credit or was it credit recovery? And the number of students. So we know based on we don't know. Using our assumptions, we're guessing 20 to 30% of students are graduating with at least one packet. Next slide. So what is a packet? A packet means a collection of instructional materials and assessment used to receive credit through the packet method. Obviously, that is legislative talk. And the method is, it means the high school student works independently without a teacher to do the assignments. These can be, and I have talked to several districts, a stapled group of papers, or it can be online. Apparently you all do it differently, so, or some of you do both. And the assessment is primarily based on the completion of assignments within the materials. Next slide. Okay, replacement credit versus original credit. Replacement credit means the kid already took the course, then didn't pass part of it, didn't show up. So these are pass fails, don't impact the GPA. Original credit, we have some LEAs that allow students to go pick up a packet for original credit. The LEA can award a grade if the packet adheres to the standards prescribed in the state board rule. The LEA has approved the packet for instructional use or uses a packet approved by USBE. Third-party vendors now have to have their packets approved by us. I don't think it's gonna impact anybody. Yes. So she asked if the packet has to be pass fail or it can be a grade. If it adheres to our core standards, then it can be given as a grade. That's a big line that the legislature wanted us to use. Next slide. Okay, LEA and USBE responsibilities. We have to report on all this great stuff. So how are we going to report on it? Because nobody tells us right now. And next year we have to report on it. Next slide. We're gonna pull it from the transcripts. Which means if you're not sending us transcripts, you need to start sending us transcripts, or I'm gonna put down this district didn't report, so you're not on the legislative report. We have created some new core codes. These are 18s and 19s, so similar to concurrent enrollment, that is a 13. 18 will be credit recovery, 19 will be original credit, and we're gonna create some generic courses. So like the kid has a quarter of fine arts, we have a generic fine arts card. So you're gonna need to start putting these in on the packets. Yes, I'm gonna go talk to the counselors too. Does anybody have any questions or want to voice some opinions about what they think about this? What? Right, so you could just put them on the transcript, so you don't, but you still have to build them in your system. Do you have to? That's, okay. So I know Ogden said they were, yeah, so we're only gonna have about 9 or 20 core codes for each replacement. So I don't know how you can build them. This was definitely not my idea. But as I said, nobody listened, so. Are there any other questions?
When are we gonna get the list?
I'm waiting for one specialist to say yes, and it'll be out, so it should be out with these, and on that website, I'll put it out there too, under core codes that are gonna cause life headaches.
How do we submit?
That is, I don't know the answer to that one. The question was, how do they submit transcripts?
They come through the clearinghouse file that you send each day. There's a couple different records in place to do that.
And then we're not gonna make you go back. So if you have a 12th grader next year who took a packet in 9th grade, I don't care. We don't need it next year. We will only start with the seniors next year with the packet courses they took this coming year. I know you're all grimacing, you should have shown up on the hill. Okay, one more question. Okay, there's someone behind you too, Aaron.
Sorry. So backing up what you just said, so we have, seniors this year, that are graduation pending, and they do packets over the summer.
I don't care. Don't care. Don't even
Okay.
mention that. Let's pretend that does not exist. We're starting with next year's 12th graders.
So in our district, we use our regular core codes and then we add them to the transcript afterwards. Would that not work?
No.
We have to recreate every course
Yes,
that's
but there
offered in the
won't,
packet.
yeah, that you offer in a packet. Because we have to know if that was credit recovery
Okay.
or original credit.
What I have to say.
Come on, you can say it. We can stop the recording for this. I begged to make it the next year, but to give us a year to get ready, but like I said. Okay, any other complaints?
Are we the first to learn about this, or are we the first to learn about this, or are there other departments that the state office? Like,
You might be the first.
Okay.
Since everyone I've spoken to here is like, what? And actually, I would love it if you would email me, because I'm gonna talk to the counselors, but you could tell me who else needs to know about this. Registers?
Because they're the ones that put the credit in.
Okay, so it's.
But it's gonna be us that does the plans. Do they have to know the app?
So council, so I don't know how to meet, to do it on registers, so.
So
That's your job.
just, I mean, administration, right, like the superintendent, business administrator, whoever.
So that when we tell schools they have to do this, they say, I don't want to do this. We can say, well, he knows about it too, and yeah.
Okay, I will have it.
So if it's coming from more than just us to the schools, that helps us. So our superintendents know.
Okay, Aaron will send out that email. No, we'll send it, I'll make sure it gets out to the superintendent and charter board heads. And teach, yeah, and on teaching learning, I'll have it announced to the curriculum directors. Any other questions? I'm sorry to ruin everybody's day. Were there any online? Okay, and you know where to find me, if you answer or email me.
It's Lori.
She's coming.
So I have a couple of assessment updates for you. They're not as bad as that one, so I feel like I'm in a good spot. All right, next slide. So, we have dropped the requirement for kindergarten students to either take KEEP or Acadians. They only take Acadians, reading now. And so we are gonna need those results from you. The end of year, spring, and middle of year read grade level and the reading intervention information, we're gonna need that from you this year. Next slide, please. If you use Aspire, SIS, that's done. You don't have to do anything. You're already reporting it to us. So kick back, put your feet up. You don't have to worry about it. We will be accepting those results, through template. You can just upload to us. The template will be included in this meeting's notes when Calista sends them out. Just upload it to your, USB, move it assessment folder, and we will take it from there. This won't be an option next year. Yes. Are you gonna eventually be collecting this in U-Tricks? Yes, it's already fielded in U-Tricks. We're collecting it for, first, second, and third grade, but we just need the kindergartners included now. We would have to, are you already working on changing all those validations? Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So if we did submit it via U-Trex for kindergartners, would we still need to do this move it file?
No,
Cause, okay,
you're good.
all right.
Only if you haven't gotten that built in, if you aren't reporting up to us. Yes,
For kindergarten, they just need reading, not numeracy.
you are already reporting numeracy to us.
Okay.
This is just for, reading.
Okay, okay.
All right, and if you need any assistance with Move It, Emily Ng in our office will be happy to help you.
There is a
Oh,
comment,
yes.
there is a comment in the chat saying, could you please repeat that answer? Just answer.
Oh, you're already reporting numeracy to us, so there's no need to make any changes regarding numeracy. All right, next slide.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, one more question. Yeah.
So like in the case of page 3, or not,
Right, in the case of first and third graders, we're not reporting the score is optional because you guys are pulling that directly from the vendor. Is that the same for kindergarten? Is it mostly
Yes.
just those additional opt-out, not,
That's
you know,
exactly
somewhere
right.
else, those kind of fields? That's what you're repeating
Yep,
to us?
those are the ones we're looking for.
Okay.
There's another comment, question. If we report this by U-Tracks, do we have to do more?
No, if you are already reporting it to us through U-Tracks, your kindergarten, you're done. You don't have to do anything. All right, just one last thing, starting for next school year, there will be an optional field in the course master record for teacher email address. That we will use for creating accounts in or Utah Aspire Plus and ALO. So you will no longer have to send us a file with teacher email addresses. You can just report them to us through U-Tracks. Oh, question?
That is not the same thing as the staff email that we will possibly ask.
Yes, no, this is strictly on a course master. It should be lined up with the teacher of the course, and it is only used for creating teacher accounts in assessment platforms. So if you choose to submit teacher email addresses to us, we won't pull them from Cactus. We won't be using a personal email address, which is the issue we've had for 2 years now. It will create them a nice account with their district email address. Yes,
just the primary teacher or also secondary teachers?
Can you repeat?
Sam Quan's from Salt Lake City School District has asked if that is, if there will be work for the secondary teacher or if it's just for the primary teacher. And it is just for the primary teacher. We don't create accounts for secondary teachers. So it's only that teacher one. That's all I have. Next slide. Any questions, feel free to get in touch. I'll also be sharing the information about the K results with your assessment directors next month. So if you want to have them make that file and send it to us with results, they will know about it too. That's it for me.
Tammy, you're on.
Yes, I am. Hi, I'm Tammy Walker with Child Nutrition, and I'm going to do an update on Utah Sunbucks, formerly known as Summer EBT. I'll try to make it go as quickly as I can. So in order for a student to be eligible for some Sunbucks for the summer of 2025, they had to meet two qualifications. The first qualification is they had to be enrolled in a school participating in either the National School
Did they
Lunch,
know my baby was in the house?
either the National School Lunch Program or the school breakfast program at any point during the current school year. So that's July 1st, 2024 to June 3rd. I think I was muted, so I'm not quite sure where I got cut off, but in reality, the enrollment for the National School Lunch Program, or for the enrollment for the student has to have for a school participating in NSLP has to be between July 1st, 2024 and whatever your last school date was for the current school year. Also, the student had to be eligible for a free reduced school meal benefits. That eligibility has to be between July 1st, 2024 and August 31st of 25. So that includes this summer. So eligibility timeframe is longer than enrollment timeframe. Basically, what that means is a student has to have been enrolled in an NSLP school this current school year, but they could become eligible during the summer, eligible for free reduced meals during the summer. But the enrollment for an NSLP school has to be for school year 25. Also make sure that you're excluding students that were eligible during the 30-day carryover at the beginning of the school and then were later dropped to paid status. Okay, next slide, please. So the round 1 data collection has already been completed. It was due April 1st. Just wanted to make a comment that LEAs that use Aspire, their data was submitted by Aspire. They sent us a file for all of those LEAs. Also, the USBE IT department is working through the submission issues for the Utrecht S5 records. We're hoping that those will be resolved before the round 2 data collection. We understand that the S5 records weren't working during the round 1 collection. We understand that. Next slide, please. The round 2 data collection will be due on May 16th. We ask that you only report newly eligible students that were not included in the round 1 data collection. We prefer that the data will be submitted via Utrecht S5 records if they are available, but the Qualtrics link will also remain active, and that will be true for the round 3 data as well. The Qualtrics link will still be active. Next slide, please. The round 3 data collection will be due September 5th, so that's after the end of the summer. Again, we ask that you only report newly eligible students that were not submitted for the round 1 or round 2 data collections. When I say newly eligible, a student may become newly eligible for free or reduced price meals over the summer months, as I said before, but they must have been enrolled in an NSLP school during school year 25. So if they're newly enrolled in an NSLP school next school year, that they won't be able to receive Sunbucks for this summer. Next slide, please. So other notes, students enrolled in a CEP, Community Eligibility Provision School, or a Provision 2 non-base year school, have to enroll for Utah Sunbucks directly from the Department of Workforce Services website. There's a link here on this slide. I know these slides will be emailed out to everyone. DWS does plan to have the website application live by April 28th, so that's next week. Also, keep in mind that households that opted out of data sharing on their application or did not apply for free or reduced price meals during the school year can also use the DWS application to apply for Sunbucks. And the website will provide information on benefit issuance dates. Next slide, please. Okay, so we don't have a poll set up, but I would like to give you a couple of minutes. Anyone that would like to put in questions in the chat here that we can take a record of and provide information to the LEAs or the food service directors. Basically, if there's something that you want to learn more about for Sunbucks, something you have a question about, or something that you think maybe the Child Nutrition Department or Department of Workforce Services hasn't thought about, hasn't considered, and hasn't made plans for. So please put in your questions here. And like I said, we'll just make a copy of it to reach out. Maybe when these slides are emailed out to everyone. I do see a question from Carolina Harvard. Is Aspire going to send the round 2 and round 3 data collection? That's a good question. I don't know what their plans are. I don't know if anyone from Aspire is in this meeting, but you will probably have to contact your Aspire contact to see what their plans are for rounds 2 and 3. Okay, next question. Are CEP school updated? As of now, the school cannot submit the data. With a high population of poverty students, many do not have access to electronics to submit the application themselves. Okay, so USBE is not able to collect student information from CEP or provision schools. The students do have to submit an online application through DWS. However, I believe that we have community partners that would be able to help someone to submit an application on the DWS website. But that is a good question. Let me take that back to our department and see if we have some kind of flyers or information we can send out where families can go to submit the application. I know currently DWS does only have an electronic application, and that is the only place that CEP or Provision 2 students can apply for Sunbucks. But I will take that question back and talk to management and see what their plans are there. So I don't see any other questions here. Like I said, if you do have questions that you want us to think about concerning Sunbucks, Summer EBT, please put them in the chat. But that is all that I have. So I think we can go on to the next slide for Cliff. Thank you very much.
We need you to unmute.
Okay.
All right, so I'll repeat the UFA program, any further developments on it and progress and requirements from LEAs at this moment is on hold due to judge has decided that it was unconstitutional, and there's currently a hearing going on for it today to try to determine the grounds and availability for an appeal process. So right now, you're on hold with us. I can tell you a little bit about what it would be if it does go through and the appeal is in place, and there will be a UFA in the next school year. And that's that the plan intends to put a relationship really between UFA and the LEAs for understanding and communicating enrollment. We'd be communicating with you a lot about what that entails, trying to assist with the new program manager that would be taking over for the next school year with what that would be. But I'm not gonna put those slides on and potentially confuse anybody and make you think that you should start changing towards that. As soon as we do get feedback on it, we're happy to get it to you as soon as possible, where you can engage your SISs to also start working on what that communication would be, establishing those connections. And there would still be the cross-check with enrollment coming from the states. Again, if there will be a UFA for the next school year, which is currently on hold. Any questions?
We don't have answers.
We don't, but we're happy to hear your questions.
Next data meeting is May 22nd. Thank you, everyone. I think we're done. Have a wonderful day. Drive safe for those who are here. See you those online when we next meeting.